my childhood, I think, has predestined me to sort of do what I am doing now. As a kid, I was one of those kids in school where everybody wanted to come to my birthday party. Now, I'm a June child, so it was always sort of good weather most of the time, or we could at least find a good weather day somewhere along the line. And all of my parties had themes. So they usually involved games. I remember we had this little swimming pool, inflatable swimming pool in the garden, and there was ball games over it, running through it. But I also did funny stuff like no junk food, for example. And I remember that influenced all of my friends to actually drop eating junk food for a week. So I had cherry tomatoes, funny cucumber shapes, all sorts of fruits and vegetables that you could cut up in little pieces, instead of having, you know, all the chocolates and crisps and what usually people had at parties. I just made mine a no junk zone. So I was that kind of kid that everybody said, she's a bit odd, she's a bit weird. And I mean, I grew up that way. I had very interesting dress codes always. In actual fact, in secondary school, one of my schoolmates who went into designing cars, who wanted to go into the fashion business with me. And I was like, no, I think I'll study. Thanks very much. But I've always kept up my interest for creative clothes. My communion parties were some of the best. So yes, I was brought up religious and still am. And as a Catholic, we have the first communion and confirmation. And both of those, we had this massive board game, like a snakes and ladders type of thing with numbers. So you threw the dice, and the dice were probably about, you know, life-size big, and the pieces that you moved forward with were also life-size big. Each number on the board was associated with a task, which was distributed around an area that we rented, which was a forest. And at each of the different numbers, there was somebody helping to facilitate the task. So you had dressing up and as a family picture. There was finding things, closing or finishing riddles, knowing specific stuff about the person that we were celebrating. I mean, this was really mega cool stuff. So no wonder I was interested in gamification. I grew up with these things. Another thing I absolutely adored doing, even though it hurt my feet at the time, and there was often, as a teenager, moaning involved, as you do, teenagers do that. That's just teenager life. But as a teenager, I would accompany my dad and my granddad on this quiz, a historical quiz around town. It was a local newspaper who organized a quiz, and they would take pictures of various important, or maybe not important or lesser known, statues or buildings, and you had to find where they were. So it was like a walking tour, and as you walk there was different questions at different points, and you finished them. And every year, without fail, we entered and walked around. And then my granddad, who is probably the biggest competitor I've known, would enter about 20 copies, so we would definitely win something. That man knew how to win stuff. We always won things when we were little. I mean, we won holidays, we won all sorts of funny toys, and until his final days, he kept doing quizzes. As a kid, my favourite things to do and toys were actually books and crosswords. I know it sounds a little bit boring, but, you know, at the same time, I loved them. I actually found my sister an interruption when I had to play with her, because she would upset my book story. I would get really engrossed into stories and the plots and etc. And actually in the library, they kept the special new books because they knew I would have read everything of my age group. And then only the new books were the ones I hadn't read. And I remember the day where the librarian actually said, I'm going to allow you in the next year up, and big wink to say, you know, you're a big girl now. And gosh, as a proud 7 or 8 year old, you know, obviously it makes you grow 2 inches. So, you know, it's those kinds of things I love doing. And, you know, still to this day, I do crosswords, I do Sudoku, I do all sorts of wordplay puzzles like your hangman with, you know, words and things. One of my favorites. for sure. So would love to hear what your favorite games are.